Are you a hip hop fan?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
One of your favorite rappers?
I mean, Biggie Smalls, LL Cool J, greatest rapper of all time.
We were just talking about both of them.
Are you?
Yeah, Tupac and Biggie. We were asking what concert would you rather go to, a Tupac or a Biggie?
Absolutely Biggie. East Coast. I mean, I know West Coast is the best coast. Not true. Not true. But I actually interviewed LL Cool J, and I made fun of him for all his lip licking. You know how he's constantly doing that. He loved it. He loved it.
That's good.
Well, today is Tupac's 50th birthday.
And he's still alive. So happy birthday, Tupac. We know you're listening.
Yes. Have to join us for our conspiracy episode we're going to do in a couple of months.
Maybe when we find him, Elizabeth, you can actually break that story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm right here, and I'll have the Emmy form pre-filled out.
Well, he have changed his name by now, right? His name would be Machiavelli instead, right?
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
He's either in Salisbury, Haverhill, or wherever.
Yeah.
You said it's okay to call you Lily if we're among friends.
Yes, please. I consider you my friends, and anyone who's a friend can call me Lily. So you go right ahead.
Awesome. So we'll do that. We've already done your intro, so you can watch that on the post production. How we
interesting.
I just read your bio.
I hope you jazzed it up a little bit. You know, something like she invented Post-it notes, and her Nobel laureate nomination is still pending. Like, you know, if you want to go back and edit it, you know, in post, you go right ahead and jazz it up as much as you like.
So one thing I did notice about it, I was joking with Derek earlier. You know, I read it real quick. I'm like, she likes to camp. I like to camp. My wife likes to camp. I can't wait to talk camping. Wait, I had to read it again. She doesn't like to camp.
No, I like not camping. Look at these nails, gentlemen. Is this the handset of a woman who likes to camp? You know what I mean?
No.
I think the best thing about you is that you're sarcastic like the rest of us on here. Yes. And that's what we love. And
I'm fitting right in with this group.
Yeah, the sarcasm.
And we love
deep.
the sarcasm, right?
Not me. I'm always serious. It's you too.
The question is, Elizabeth, like, do you like a good s'mores? Like, you know, that's usually like a campfire thing. Would you take a s'mores?
I'm so glad you asked this question. I've been waiting to be asked this question. Not only do I like a good s'more, but I like it so much that I have invented the wintertime s'more. And here's how you do it. First of all, you need a large, those super big marshmallows. You take those super big marshmallows.
Lily, can you just repeat that again? We lost you for a second there.
I will be happy to, because I think if this wintertime s'mores recipe doesn't get out to the world, I will consider it a great loss. So you take tinfoil, you put it in the oven, put the broiler on low. You need to have 2 graham crackers, 2 chunks of chocolate, and one of those giant marshmallows that you've cut in half. Bada bing, bada boom, you got s'mores year round. Now, if you want it as a great dessert, you don't finish it. You let it cool, wrap it up in that tinfoil, throw it in the freezer. Now you got a great dessert.
Wow. I noted it. Notated.
Okay.
Yeah.
3 Guys Cookbook.
Yeah.
Each of our guests can give us a recipe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll add that to our mug and our cookbook.
Yeah.
So Lily, we like, if you've watched any of our previous episodes or listened to any of our previous episodes, we like to have just a little bit of fun.
Yes.
Before we get started. So we have this, I pulled this thing out of a food magazine. It's a pizza IQ quiz.
Okay.
You like pizza?
First of all, I love pizza. And have you heard the overarching theory about pizza in general?
No.
Okay. So first of all, everybody is comparing the slice that they're eating right now to their childhood pie that their parents brought home on a Friday night. Mm. So you're always measuring against that. Second of all, we've been eating it wrong. You can't eat it folding it up so that the bread's on the outside. You got to reverse that so the cheese is on the outside, hits the tongue, boom.
Really?
That's interesting. I like it.
What's funny about that is that Brett, when we were talking about the pizza, Brett went right to his childhood pizza place.
Yeah.
When we were talking about
that. Yeah, it's funny.
So then...
So that's it. Lane's Deli Pizza, $5 pies, and we would never get them delivered because we didn't have the money to tip the guy. So we would go try to get them.
Well, see.
All right, so here we go. I'm gonna fire a couple of these at you, and all 3 of you can play. All right, so we'll try to do one for each, and Lily, we'll start with you. We'll start with you. Are Okay, here we go. What is the difference between marinara sauce and pizza sauce?
Sugar, I would think.
So there's multiple choice.
Okay.
All right, the first one is A, marinara has been cooked, pizza sauce is raw. Marinara contains basil, pizza sauce does not. Pizza sauce is chunkier than marinara, or they're the same thing?
Well, I would think pizza sauce is thinner than marinara. Hey, honey, I got an Italian husband. Hold on a second. Hey, honey.
Get his body.
What's the difference between marinara and pizza sauce? He won't let me cheat.
All right. Do you guys want to take a guess? Fred or Derek?
Okay, I'm going to say basil. Did we say basil?
That's your guess?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the guess is wrong.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Wrong. Do you guys want to take a shot?
There's something about the chunky. I kind of lost you there, but I think it's the chunkiness.
Yeah, chunkiness.
So the answer is marinara has been cooked. Pizza sauce is raw.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Well, that makes sense because you're popping it in the oven.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Use deductive reasoning.
All right. I'm gonna throw one. This is one to you. Derek, Brett, we'll throw this one to you. Ready? And you guys, these two are Italian.
I know.
If you guys don't answer this, you guys gotta turn in.
I think the last question I should have turned it in.
Okay. Which Italian city is the birthplace of modern pizza?
You giving us multiple choice or?
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I got it.
It's pizza.
A, Milan.
Yeah, there you go.
A, Milan. B, Rome. C, Naples. D, Florence.
It's Naples.
No, it's Milan.
I say it's Rome.
Brett got it.
It's Naples, huh?
The answer is
Napolitan.
Pizza evolved from flatbreads that were working class Neapolitan people ate in the 18th century.
Ah.
Learn something every day now.
All right.
Anyway, what if you challenged it as well as the Irish German girl? I'm just saying.
All right, we'll do one last one, then we'll get rolling. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Derek, we'll say this one's for you. This is true or false. Let me just make sure I read it the right way. True or false? Two 8-inch pizza pies for $18. Math one is better than one 12-inch pie for $18.
All right, Brian. I mean, this is like an SAT question. Like, if one train's going at 50 miles an hour and another one's going. I mean,
no, man. That's the last question. It's kind of a joke one. So, all right. Well,
was it B?
No, it was a joke. It
was a joke.
Oh,
okay.
I'm like, what is this?
You can have both. It doesn't matter.
All right.
Thank you again, Lily, for joining us. We
My
so
pleasure.
appreciate. We're so lucky to have you with us and partner.
Well,
with you.
we'll see by the end of the show if you still feel that way.
Well, what episode are we on right now?
It's like 15 or 16, I think. Yeah. But between the bonus episodes, I think we're probably like close to 20, but yeah.
And everyone still likes us, right? So far?
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing it. All right.
That's debatable.
So far, that could change. No, but so we thought it'd be fun to sort of you sent us some really great stuff to learn about you. And it was fascinating. I listened to it all day yesterday, both things that you sent to me. And what we want to try to do is maybe, at least from my end, maybe touch on a couple of things that you talked about as it relates to sort of what our program is about, what our show's about, and then maybe have a little bit of fun. And we're just going to kind of go, I'm going to start and then we'll go in no particular order and we'll go from there. So the first thing, very, very first thing, I thought it was really, really interesting. There was so many things you said that were fascinating to me, but one of them was this term you called successful failure. And the reason I thought that was interesting because every single guest we've had on has talked about, in fact, David Leonardo, the CEO of the ice cream company in Miami, he and I talked offline. He thought it was interesting. You don't hear enough about people's failure that ultimately leads them to their success. So can you talk a little bit further on that term, successful failure?
Yeah, well, I think, unfortunately, one of the great things about America is that we say, like, you can achieve any dream, you can attain any dream, but we don't really talk about the fact that there's a lot of anything you endeavor to do is going to be far more painful than you can calculate. There are going to be far more obstacles than you can calculate. And they're going to be things that you do that you're going to make mistakes with. And the stories that we tell and the stories that we revere in our society are the ones where it's just, it's the same thing that we want to see our stocks do, right? They start at the bottom and then they zoom up, and that's the success story, right? And I just think that there are so many times where success in the way that we envisioned it eludes us. And that is so beneficial. It's beneficial because it's really important to understand, why do we specifically want that thing? What are we going after? What is the value that's hidden in that? And it's only through, unfortunately, the biggest lessons that you learn are through painful experiences. And I think that a lot of times we put so much pressure on ourselves. We put so much pressure on our family members and our loved ones to succeed in a very specific way. And a lot of times, when it comes specifically to fathers, a lot of times they want their kids to be extensions of themselves, right? So you never played football, but you imagine being a football star, and the next thing you know, you've got a kid who should be in the marching band, who's playing football because they want to succeed for you and in your eyes. Mm-hmm. And that is just a recipe for a disaster waiting to happen. One of the things that I've really been focusing on more of, even more than being a successful failure, is this idea of emotional sobriety, and this idea of I am not responsible for your feelings about my behavior. That's sort of the evolution of being a successful failure. Because if you can say, every time I quote unquote fail, I learn something from it, that's kind of step one. Step two is to say, I really don't, it doesn't bother me how you feel about how I perform, because your feelings about my behavior is none of my business.
Building off of that, you ran into a couple situations where you were sitting here saying, what am I doing? Where am I supposed to go here? Like literally, like there was like two things that you hit on with the Milford Area Chamber of Commerce. You're sitting there, what am I doing? Like what's happening here? Which led you, like, I think the biggest thing where a lot of people have is like, you get into these moments and you're like, what's happening? Like, what's my next step? I want it now. But you talk about the character being kind of teased out of you a little bit.
Yeah.
That you learn from that and brings you to the next step.
Yeah, I think, obstacles that I do think that if you feel like you're hitting your head against the wall, you need to stop and say, is this something I meant to do? And then, am I doing it the right way? Like, do I need to be approaching this differently? And sometimes it's just time. It really is, and reflection. There are just so many lessons that you learn when you have those obstacles about how you persevere, how you overcome them. But, for me, I think even the times that have been the most painful have been the catalysts for growth personally for me. And, I think that if you're only looking at the thing, I've got one goal in mind, there's one thing I'm going to do, you're going to miss out on your whole life. You're going to miss out on, the buried treasure that is all of the lessons along the way that come from not being able to. I mean, if you imagine, you guys, if you got everything that you wanted, when you were 19 years old, I mean, what a disaster that would be. I know it would be for me. All three of you would have muscle cars and speeding tickets, I'm sure.
I when I was watching that, first, when I was trying to do some research, I was becoming more impressed the fact that I thought you won the Mayflower at first. I said, I'm like looking down, I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, what the hell is this? And then I had to do a backtrack, and then I said, wait a second. So when you started off, and I want to take it back a little earlier, with the Chamber of Commerce, like, I was impressed because sometimes, and I'm not saying it because you're on here, when you listen to some people, they talk and they're like, all right, I'm getting bored after a while. This is going nowhere. But I listened from start to finish. I loved it. But what I really liked is the examples you gave about starting off about rejection with Oprah and Katie Couric, about, like when you were told in the beginning, like, you're never going to go to the next, you're not going to be in anger, like that. Can you explain like how, like basically you tell people, to learn from that and say, you know what, they're not the ones that are going to tell me what to do. I'm going to do it because I don't want someone to take me off the track of my ultimate goal as to where I want to be. Because some people take that as a no, and they say, okay, I guess I can't do this, and I'm not going to pursue it. And they don't follow their goals to the end.
Well, I mean, didn't Michael Jordan get kicked off his high school basketball team.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you know, I'm a child advocate. And so one of the most frustrating things for me is hearing the way that children are told, you know, yeah, that's not going to happen, or quit dreaming, or forget about that. And because we're conditioned to listen to those stories about how you can't have what you're looking at. That's for a small group of people. I heard a quote recently that said, you know, your biggest fear isn't that you won't make it. Your biggest fear is actually that you will make it. And what are you going to, and who are you to actually achieve all of those things? And I think that that's what we're told by adults all the time. Who are you to be the one who gets out of poverty? Who are you to be the one that breaks the domestic violence cycle? Who are you to be the one who achieves your goals, or goes to college, or becomes the first millionaire in your family? And you know, a lot of times there are studies. I'm reading a book called Fear by Dr. Pippa Grange, and she helped she helped one team, and I'm not a football. I'm not a soccer person, but she helped a team get to the top of the World Cup of FIFA, and one of the things that she was talking about was just how much we absorb when we're around people who maybe didn't achieve their dreams. They don't necessarily want you to achieve yours, because if you do, then they start thinking, well, wait a second, should I have persevered? Should I have tried harder? Should I have gotten a different approach? They're much more comfortable keeping you where you are. You find this with dieting too. You know, as soon as, for women, as soon as one woman loses a little weight, she gets a little bit of encouragement, and that's sort of boosted along. And then if she loses what her friends would deem as too much weight, they start to, you know, poo-poo her a little bit and tell her that she's sort of, try to stab, or even drinking. I mean, have you ever tried to do Sober January? This is, I know this is like a small little snippet, but this really does speak to a larger picture. If you've ever tried to do Sober January and you say, you know, I'm not going to have any alcohol for the entire month of January, as soon as you go to your first party or event, and you tell people you're doing that, they're like, come on, just have one drink. You're fine. What's the big deal? And everybody starts pulling you in that way. That, without realizing it, is how we live most of our lives. We are constantly acquiescing to everybody else's feelings around us and matching them, instead of saying, no, I deserve this. This is okay for me to have that.
One of the other things that you had mentioned, and I think it was in both of the items that you sent us, was how you live with purpose. And I want to hear how, it's kind of a two-part question. My first question is, how do you personally define purpose and intention with your own career path? And then the second part of the question, and I was really happy to hear you talk about it, was your faith. And you're not shy about it, which is great, because it's hard nowadays in some areas to wear that on your sleeve. So I was really happy to hear you talk about, especially a couple of the at that chamber breakfast. So you had mentioned that when you pray, you get multiple answers. So I'd like to have you talk about that part of your prayer and your faith, and then how it supports your purpose and your intention.
Well, first of all, I think that each one of us is given, unique God-given talents and abilities that he doesn't put there to frustrate. You know, he's not a God. God is not a God of unrequited love. If he put these dreams and these desires and these goals in your heart, it's for a reason, because he could have given you something else. And what a frustrating life that is, if these little seeds are in your way deep down that you want to see sprout and be fruitful, and there's no reason for them. So that's the beginning of purpose. Not only that, but another part of purpose is, every single bad, painful, difficult thing that has happened to you in your life is purposeful in drawing out your direction. And I like to say that, life is like bowling with the bumpers up. So, when you're a little kid and you're bowling with those bumpers, the ball hits one side of the bumper and then another side of the bumper. But all of that momentum and even those knocks help to get you all the way down to where, you're achieving your purpose. And, for me, I think what you're referring to in terms of prayer is, I think that people either treat God like a genie, where they either say, oh Lord, I would love the lottery numbers, please. Please let me be the Mega Millions jackpot, right?
Nobody
Every night I do that.
Podcast does that.
Yeah.
This guy up here on my left.
So sometimes we treat God as a genie, or it's okay to treat him in your emergency ripcord. You can go to him at any time when there's an emergency, but it's more appropriate to incorporate him into every aspect of your life, because he wants to have an intimate, personal relationship with you, a one-on-one relationship with you. And so I like to say, that God answers prayer 3 ways. Yes, wait, or I have something better. Because frequently what we think, even in, and I know that's a really hard thing to say, I think that, when you think of the death of a loved one or some very difficult circumstances, you think, well, how can this ever be better? But, God talks about the fact that he wants to give you back the years that the locusts destroyed, and that all things are working together for good for those who love him. So when you have that kind of relationship, it also talks about that he will order your steps. He anyone who has a child, and I don't have kids, but anyone who has a child would say, I just want my son or daughter to come to me. I mean, I don't want you to be struggling. I don't want you to be fearful. I want to, when we're talking about a good father, and by the way, there are some people who are great people because of their fathers, and there are some who are great people in spite of their fathers. But when you have a good father, that is someone who wants to say, I don't want you to have any anxiety. I don't want you to have any fear. I am your safety net. I will catch you. I will guide you. I will lead you. And the other thing too is, and I like to do this exercise, anytime you're nervous about something, and there's so many studies that talk about the fact that 9 times out of 10, the worst thing that you think is going to happen doesn't end up happening. But let's say it was, a court case or something. If your father was a multi-billionaire, would you worry for 1 second what was going to happen with most of your life? No, because you would say, he has the connections, he has the resources, he has the ability, he probably is a knowledgeable person. But that is who we're talking about. That is who you have when you have a relationship with God, a personal relationship with God. So the reason it's so important to me is because I see a lot of people walking around with anxiety, with nervousness, downtrodden, and also wearing a lot of weight of responsibility that they were never meant to carry and they were never meant to wear. A lot of that does come from our parents. A lot of that does come from, even in subtle ways, believing that we were supposed to, take on the company and be, or, I watch these British shows and you see these lines and lines of people who, this is the family home and it's this gorgeous mansion. And all you see is that they're just pulling out their hair going how am I going to pay for this? How am I going to do this? And they're stuck. I mean, look what happened with Prince Harry. People across the pond are they're ragging on him. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, when you are in a monarchy situation, and by the way, you're the heir and the spare, and you're the spare. I mean, do you ever get to really live your life? Or are you just living the weight of the responsibility and carrying on the tradition? And even though that's a British story, that's a very American story in lots of ways,
I had another question, but kind of going back to that, there was a video on YouTube. It was what do you want? It was a 3-minute clip. It was really cool. And I think it's an English actor. And he's just saying, what do you want? What could you do if there's no money involved? Do you think, do you see the generation nowadays, the earlier generations? I think we're all kind of in the same, the 4 of us in the same generation. Do you see them taking different steps to that, where they're kind of going against the norm and saying, hey, I'm not dealing with the parent stuff anymore. I'm going to do with what I want. I'm going to head in the direction that I want to go to.
Well, I absolutely do. And I think we're going to see it even more. So the fact that we think about this, and this is, I mean, now we're really getting my goat here, but the fact that we tell 18-year-old kids, we want to know what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And it's going to cost you as much as a house to achieve that. And by the way, you're not going to be able to buy a house and you're not going to be able to buy a car. And oh, by the way, then we look behind us and we go, oh, there are no electricians. There are no plumbers. There are no tradesmen. Why? Because we have so glorified a college education above everything else, right? And not only a college education, but it has to be the right college education. So, the whole college admission scandal. And it's so very important that we'll help kids cheat on their SATs, lie about being on a crew team, and on and on and on, that we have completely ignored who they are. If you take a look at so Lori Loughlin is a perfect example. Lori Loughlin was Aunt Becky on Full House, and she's married to Massimo Giannulli, who is a designer. And, Olivia Jade was an influencer. You can roll your eyes at that if you want, but she was making six figures doing that, whatever that was, and a very creative field. And her parents said, you have to go to college. You have to. And she said, I'm already making a six-figure salary. I can go to college later if I need to. I don't want to do it. And her parents forced her to. And she came across in a lot of videos seeming like a brat, because anyone would have given, their left arm to have the kind of opportunity she did. But why did they do that? Was it out of her best interest? Was it out of recognizing who she was as an individual and the time that she was growing up? No, it was because Massimo Giannulli came over with $100 in his pocket, I believe from Italy, to be a designer, and was always scrimping and saving and clawing his way to the top. And Aunt Becky was an actor who, by the way, that's the largest, aside from modeling, that's like the biggest rejection you can have. It's just constant rejection. It's not sure. One month you make enough money to pay your rent. The next 3 months, there's no one even wants to see your face. So you can just tell, it's just that news story is just dripping with their fear that we don't want our daughter to struggle the way we did. And so we're going to tell her our vision of how to do it. And I think a lot of young people are rejecting those things. And I think we're going to see it eventually with college, because right now they don't understand. They don't understand that you are mortgaging your future when you decide you're going to go to USC, when you're going to, I went to a community college and I did very well for myself. You don't have to have that one definition of success. And then the other thing that we're seeing, and I think we're getting away from this a little bit, but the whole tiny house movement. People who are saying, do I really need all this stuff? And even the gig economy. Rent the Runway, Bag, Borrow, or Steal, Uber, Airbnb, all of those are saying, I could just get a little taste, a little bite of that particular lifestyle. And then I don't have to carry the mortgage and I don't have to pay the credit card bill. And then on the other side, you have people who say, I have this traditional, career, but maybe I can do a little side hustle. And that's the other thing. One other thing I will say is that, we were in a country years and years ago when we had a 2-parent household, but it was a 1-income household, and the entire family could exist on that. Then there was war. Women got into the workforce. They remained in the workforce, which was a really good thing because it gives women autonomy and agency and choices and that sort of thing. But it shifted us to a place where now we needed 2 incomes just to get by. Now we're in a position where, I know people in my own business who, they're finishing up their day at work and then they're driving for Lyft and they're driving for Uber and they're doing side hustles or they, have an Airbnb that they rent out, and they're doing that because either they can't make ends meet or because the college debt load is just too high. So I think eventually there will be a rejection of this, and I hope there will be. But really what we're talking about is expanding what your vision and your view of success is.
Well, I wanted to build on that, the community college, because I went to community college. Brian went to community college. Can you explain why community college was a benefit for you and how it made you where you are now, where it can say, I want to figure out what I want to do?
So first of all, you don't have to cheat to get in.
No, that's true.
Okay.
Well, I did.
Text the box.
Okay. Second of all, it gives you better access. There are times where, if your parents are getting divorced, or you have been abused in your household, or you don't feel like you're smart, or have been made to feel like you're not smart, or have ADHD. I mean, any of these, and there are a multitude of reasons why, high school didn't feel like the right academic fit for you. You get kind of a second chance because you can go for 2 years to school. You can improve your grades. You can kind of pull yourself up and really buckle down and say, okay, now I'm a grown up. But also just accessibility in terms of the financial side of things. I mean, part of the reason why college is so expensive is because you have a rock climbing wall and you have the good dorm and you have, laundry services that are delivered to your dorm room. You don't need any of that. And quite frankly, even if you have that in college, once you get out and you get your first job, none of that's there because you can't afford it. Yeah. So, I think community college really gives you the opportunity to understand that, the value of an education, pure and simple, without the bells and whistles.
I'm going to throw myself on the mercy of Lily Court. Okay. I don't watch the news. I'm not a news person. And it's for a couple of reasons, primarily, especially with the pandemic, obviously a lot of things that were there were negative. I follow you on social media. I was following you this weekend. You were in Nantucket. I'm going to Provincetown in a couple of weeks. I cannot wait. So how do you handle the perception of your industry? You've been in it a long time. And would you do the same path? Would you go back into the journalism industry if you could do it over again, or would you do something different? And your employer is not watching, right?
Not listening.
Yeah. Not listening, watch, right?
Well, quite frankly, there's still time. There is still time for me to do anything I want at any time. There's still time. So, and whether they're watching or they're not watching, nobody owns me. So, that's the first thing. The second thing is I do think that I would do the same thing again. I really, really love my job. I love, I love, particularly at Boston 25, our morning show crew is fantastic. I mean, the people that you see, like Sarah and Jean and Shiri and Catherine, I mean, who they are on TV is who they are behind the scenes. And, the television industry can be a very competitive industry. Anybody who's in TV is a little bit damaged because, but it's so true because, I grew up in New York and I left that fantastic lifestyle to go stand in the rain on Christmas in a black hole in South Dakota to be on TV for 2 minutes. There's something wrong.
When you mentioned that, all I could think about was that Jim Carrey movie when he was in Niagara Falls.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I had in my head. Sorry.
Bruce Almighty, yeah.
Yeah, and I was making $18,000 a year. I think I was below the poverty level. And yet, I think everybody gets into this business because there's a hunger in there, right? There's a hunger that says, look at me, love me, love me. And that even more so in the performing industry, acting and that sort of thing. I actually heard, I think on NPR, I'm getting this percentage wrong, but like a ridiculously high percentage of people have had some sort of severe trauma. And so they're trying to make up for that love by being on TV or on a billboard or in an ad campaign. And there's a little bit of that in the television industry too. You're putting yourself in front of people open to being judged with the hope that they will like you or love you. And I was a very goal-oriented person. I had this idea that, I was going to be in Rapid City, South Dakota one day, and the next day I was going to be on the Today Show, just like Katie Couric, and that is still a possibility. Just a distinct possibility. As a matter of fact, some of my most recent discussions with other opportunities were at that level. And there were just a couple of circumstances that didn't allow me to step into that at the moment. And yet at the same time, one of the things that I am really sort of learning is, again, this redefining what does success mean? Because if you do follow my Instagram stories, I swear people must think that I'm perpetually on vacation. I am, I get done with my portion of the show by 10 a.m. I'm doing a little bit of work at 11 a.m. I can be on the beach in the summertime by noon every single day. And it gives me a lot of flexibility with my time. It makes me feel like, and we have unlimited vacation time, which is a wonderful benefit at the station. And so, there is, it was really funny because I was looking at this one particular opportunity and going to take it. Were it not for this, situation that I had in my personal life. And I decided that, I wasn't going to be able to take it. And I realized, it occurred to me, oh my gosh, yesterday I was on the beach. And I realized I would not have been doing this if I had taken that other opportunity. So the pay would have been, exponentially more. The profile would be exponentially more. I would be back home in New York. I would be, all of the things I would have the eyeballs on me, all the things that I had sort of checked off as my success list. And I likely will still do that. I may still do that. But there is also something wonderful about the fact that there's less pressure, less travel, less eyeballs on me, and more free time in what I'm doing. And yet, if someone looks at one compared to the other, they would say, well, that's a more successful opportunity, that high-powered, high-paying opportunity. But is it? I mean, and why? When you can be in the sunshine, which is free, listening to the salt water and the waves, which are free. I mean, does anything really beat? Isn't that what we're going for anyway? To get through all of this success so that we can live our lives? Yep. But what if you can live, what if you can find that balance where you can live your life now? Isn't that the success? Isn't that the win?
Yeah, you're totally right. And I think it goes back to what you had said before about the, society influencing you and saying, you just have that in the back of your mind where I need to have that, that fancy, big house. And I need to be.
Wait, let me ask you, I'm going to interrupt you guys for a second because you're saying that, but let me ask you this. What do you think about Tom Brady still playing? What's your thoughts about that and his retirement and what he still has to prove and that sort of thing?
I think it's fantastic. I think that he is the competitive, coming from me playing sports, the competitive nature of it is what does it. That's what drives me. It really wouldn't be the money. I mean, if you said to me, hey, I can go out there and play sports, professional hockey, because I played hockey and I get into it and I could play up until 45, 46, so long as my health and, my body could take it, I would do it. It wouldn't be for the money. It'd be because of the competitive nature, the camaraderie, being around friends and playing with other people.
I totally get that. And there is a significant value in that. Absolutely. But when you have, what are we on? 7? Remind me, how many Super Bowl rings? Seven Super Bowl rings. When you've got the opportunity to be at home with your kids, when your wife is begging you to please, retire, when you're eating avocado ice cream instead of regular ice cream. I mean, there is a lot of sacrifice that comes along. It's not simply, I'll just play until I can't play anymore. That's the tagline. But really what you're doing is you're sacrificing every single day. And what exactly is driving that? And I'm not faulting him. I would like to see where it goes too and how far he can go. I mean, he's defying physics and maybe that's the thing that he wants to prove. But I just wonder, at the end of all of our lives, is that the thing that we're going to point to and say, thank God I did that? Or will it be the time that we spent with family, the time that we, spent with friends, the moments that we didn't miss with children, the vacations that we were able to take whenever we wanted to take them, the food that we got to eat because we enjoyed it. First of all, Tom Brady doesn't care what I have to say, nor should he. He is doing amazing. And quite frankly, I might not even have this conversation if he was still playing for the Patriots because. Yeah.
True.
But do you see what I'm saying? I understand. So,
I agree with you.
I guess if you have the gentleman, we had a New York portrait photographer on, and he talked about the reasons why he got to where he, some of the things that he's accomplished. And he said, there's just this inner fire into me. There's this drive. He's like, I can't explain it, but it just I can run through a wall if I have to. So I guess I'll put the question back to you, Elizabeth. What do you tell someone that really wants to like accomplish these things and that has that drive, how do you just put the flame out? Like you just one day just say,
I don't want to put the flame out. I never want to put the flame out. What I want to say is, why is that flame there? Let's take a look at it. What do you, and actually Oprah did this one time where she said, you know, and here's the other thing. I also think that if you're doing this because it's coming from something that you want to do, you should be able to do that. I just don't want anyone to feel the pressure to have to do that. But I saw a really interesting thing that Oprah did one time because she was, I mean, this had to be in the 80s or 90s, and she was interviewing someone in the audience on her show. And she said to them, the woman said, "Oh, all I want is $1 million. All I want, you know, that song, I want to be a millionaire so friggin' bad. You know, I just want $1 million." And so Oprah says to this woman, you don't want $1 million. You want what that $1 million represents. You want security. You want peace. You want to not have to worry about paying the bills. So what I'm asking is not to put out the flame. That would be abhorrent to me if I discourage someone for really going for their dreams, because I went for my dreams, let me tell you. But I think at some point along the way, you have to examine this thing that I'm going for so hard. Why is it really important to me? What is it telling me about my worth, about my value, about my worthiness of being loved? And that can be anything. That can be starting a family. That can be starting a business. There are some women who don't believe that they have any worth unless they have kids, and they know that because their mother told them and their mother-in-law told them. I just think it was really interesting when Oprah said that, you don't want that $1 million. What you want is what it represents, and you can get that without killing yourself. I always think that hard work is involved, but it should never be at the sacrifice of your health. It should never be the sacrifice of your family, of your peace, and of a disconnection from your source, right? It should be God guided. And if it is God guided, I believe that he will give you lift.
Yeah.
I have two questions because it's kind of tied in together. And one of them was, I was looking at your Instagram and I saw back in May, you posted about mental health, May for being Mental Health Awareness Month. And I found it interesting that you said that the pandemic didn't create the mental health. Mental health was there. It's only the pandemic that brought it out and showed people that people actually needed help. And I'd like to know if you could elaborate on that. And the second question I have, and it was really, this one hit me, is when you were on the podcast, they asked what you covered, which was significant to you. And it was, you had mentioned Sandy Hook, and there was a post that said, why? And you said, this no longer it doesn't surprise people anymore. And have we come that far as a society that this stuff doesn't surprise anyone anymore? This is just going to be commonplace?
I think that, what you're talking about is, the Sandy Hook massacre. I covered that, the Newtown shootings, and I went into the town, and it was unlike anything else that I had ever covered before. You could feel that there was a pall over the entire town. It was like moving through sludge. I mean, I swear, it was almost like the stoplights changed at a slower pace than normal. I mean, I'm exaggerating that, of course, but it really was it was nothing I'd ever experienced before. And while I was going into town with my photographer, there was a light pole, and there was a sign that had just in orange spray paint, "Why?" ? And it was tacked up. And it was just, I feel sick to my stomach even telling you this at this moment, because, it was like you didn't need any, in news, we always talk about context. You want to explain what happened before and how we got here and you didn't need any context to understand that billboard. Why would someone do this? Why is that happening? And one of the things that I frequently get asked is like, how do you hold it together emotionally when, these kinds of stories, you have to cover them. And first of all, I don't always hold it together emotionally. And I think that that's a good thing, because you have to bring, we're done with the old iron pants version of voice of God. And people really want they want authenticity. They want to know that you feel what they feel, and you do, because we live here too. But the reason I am not always knocked off my center is because I'm not surprised anymore. I think that we are not valuing some of the basic fundamentals. We are overtaxed, we are overburdened, we are isolated. If you think about the way societies used to grow up, you would have, maybe the men out hunting and gathering, and the women would be all together, raising their children together. And, there was this community. And if you needed help, you just reached out to your sister-in-law or cousin or whoever who was in the hut with you. And I just think that there is now, instead, we put our children in little daycares and we say that that's what's best for them. And whether it is or not is not up for me to decide. But we get out of work and we race to go pick them up. And then we race to go get something to eat. And then we sit down and we're exhausted. And it's a rat race that we have. And I think that there's an emotional breakdown of couples. There's an emotional breakdown of families. And we are forgetting about the unique traits. And then when we haven't achieved the success that we deem we should achieve, we put that pressure on children to carry that forward for us and carry the family flag and do better. And so when some of these things happen, it doesn't surprise me. I'm a volunteer at a cafeteria in my neighborhood. And a lot of times these kids who are completely disarming and completely honest just share things about their families that it really gets me, because it's tantamount to neglect in some cases. And that's just the volunteer position. I'm also a court-appointed special advocate for children. And sometimes what you're watching is one and the same, and nobody assigned me to the case of the 100 kids in my cafeteria. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that was that. That was part two. What was part one of your question?
No, it meant May being, that the pandemic had actually. Oh, yeah.
And Elizabeth, he likes to steal the thunder once in a while and throw two questions in there.
No, I'm so glad. I am so glad that you asked. And it is sort of one and the same. It's two sides of the same coin. But, one of the things that I've been learning about recently is emotional buffering. And so in some ways, emotional buffering is really helpful, because what it does is it allows us to kind of modulate our feelings. And so I'll do this, it's a Wednesday, I don't want chicken and broccoli, and I'll say, oh, I should go out to dinner to eat. And I'm sort of buffering from going home and having my chicken and my broccoli. There are lots of ways where we emotionally buffer without realizing it, that we're not really sitting with uncomfortable feelings about experiences we've had and how we're reacting to those experiences, or how we think we should have reacted to certain experiences, or how people told us we should have reacted, told us we were a good person or a bad person. And so what starts to creep into our lives is emotional buffering. And emotional buffering can be done with lots of different ways. It could be alcohol and drugs. It could be binge watching Netflix. It could be, binge eating food. But frequently, our emotional buffering, I think, comes in the form of our cell phones. And I'm guilty of this too. You're standing in line. You don't really necessarily feel comfortable, like, meeting the eyes of someone who's a stranger, or you feel like, if I'm just standing here, is everybody going to think I'm a loser?
It's like the elevator. You do that in elevators too. You're like,
totally. Okay. So Brett, why do you do that in the elevator?
You know what? I catch myself, Elizabeth, like it's the same thing you're saying. Like, you feel a little bit awkward, but I've started teaching myself, you know what? Let the awkwardness be there. I don't care. I'm going to put the phone in the back. I just did it today in the elevator. And I said, you know what? I'm going to sit there and have a conversation. And I did. And that ended up turning into like a 10-minute conversation.
And so you might meet someone who you might invite on your podcast, or find out something about, a business that's in the building that you're bypassing. But even if that doesn't happen, I think a lot of times that we're uncomfortable sitting with, awkward or discomforting feelings. And so what we do is we emotionally buffer, and then we wash over those. But after a while, the emotional buffering, it's not enough. It's not enough dopamine, or we haven't really worked out those issues. A lot of times it's much easier to, like it's totally been said to me, like, well, if I'm just standing there in this business, and I'm not talking to anybody, people are going to think I'm a loser. I mean, one of my favorite things in the world is to go to a restaurant myself, sit at the bar, order food, have a great meal, and just have the quiet time to myself, and people watch a little bit. And I have been told by many friends that they would never do that because all the people around them must be thinking they're a loser. Well, what happened in the past that makes you have that soundtrack that says I'm a loser? Because quite frankly, maybe it was helpful for me. I was told I was a loser many times when I was young. And so now you go right ahead because, this is what it is. We're not, this is where we landed. But it's feelings like that we're emotionally buffering from constantly without even realizing it.
So I want to switch gears a little bit, going back to your sort of what you do professionally. And I was watching your highlight reel or your reel that you have on your website. And a couple questions here. The first question is, how do you keep a straight face during some of the things that you're talking about? Because quite frankly, I was laughing because on your highlight reel, it went from kind of serious to joking to serious to joking. I was trying to figure out which one was which. So that's my first question. And then there's so many movies out there that kind of pick on your profession. Are there any of those that you've watched and been like, yes, that's our newsroom?
Actually, The Newsroom, I think with Jeff Daniels, but this is really funny. So, Jeff Daniels was in the show, The Newsroom, that was in some ways it's a dramatic representation, but they even had like their phones rang the way our phones rang, and they had there's a little editing chirping sound that you hear in the newsroom, and they had that. I mean, it was almost PTSD because as soon as I watched it, I was I was like, I'm back at work. But so Jeff Daniels was in that, and of course Jeff Daniels' famous movie was Dumb and Dumber. He was also in that. And in The Newsroom, he played a very serious role and a serious anchor man. And of course, in Dumb and Dumber, he gets frozen together via urine with Jim Carrey on the back of a motorcycle. So, but I love to say that someday.
By the way, Derek's favorite movie. Sorry about that.
Oh, great movie.
It is.
And do you see that they pass? What I love is it's the Farrelly brothers, right? Because they actually passed on the highway, the Big Blue Bug in Rhode Island.
Yes.
That was like a highlight for my family. So, but what's really funny is I say that some days I'm Jeff Daniels of The Newsroom, and some days I'm Jeff Daniels of Dumb and Dumber, and you just kind of have to play between.
The power of relationships as it related to that Indiana situation, where you almost took a position in there, you didn't, but it came kind of full circle. And what advice would you give to similar people, whether it's your industry, any other industry, how that comes around? It kind of goes back to one of the original questions, but I think that power, that relationship factor, that you didn't forget that you left on a good standing. And tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, first of all, I think I'll say above everything, I think the most important relationship that you have is with yourself and your relationship with God. I think that's really important. And when you talk about, and those were such kind words that you said, by the way, and I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate it because I think one of the hardest things in the world to do on TV, whether you're at the very first stage or the end stage or the top tier, is to be yourself. And people are hungry for authenticity. We have seen airbrush versions of celebrities. We've seen airbrush versions of politicians. We've heard politicians say one thing and behave another way. And that doesn't matter what political party they're affiliated with. And people are sick of it. They want to know that how a person comes across, that there's some trust in that they can believe and have faith in who that person is as they've gotten to know them as a public figure. And so I think that, so when you said Indiana, I'm curious about what specific thing you were asking about.
There was a point that you had you almost took the job, but you didn't. And that person became your boss essentially, right?
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. So this was really funny because it was a difficult time at work, and it was so difficult that I decided, you know what, I'm going to leave and I'm going to pursue another avenue. I'm going to go somewhere else, wherever that is, because, it was just, not a tenable situation anymore. And so I went and I interviewed, and I was going to take the job. And I said to the news director, you know what, I'm not going to, I've prayed about it. And I actually, for me personally, and I think, you have to God works with your particular language. So what's working for me, you have to figure this out for yourself. But, I prayed about it. I just didn't have peace about taking that job. And I didn't know why. I didn't have peace. I wasn't settled. And usually when I know that God has answered, yes, move forward in that, I have complete peace about it. And that was not happening. And so I told the news director, thank you so much for, inviting me, out to your station, but I'm not going to take the job. And he said, are you sure? We really loved you. We thought you were great, the skill set and everything. I said, no, I'm sure. Well, he calls me back a couple months later and he says, are you, we've looked at other candidates. We like you the best. Is there anything we can do to convince you? And I said, no, again. Shortly after that, he left that company, took a job in California. The company that he took the job with ended up buying our station. So we were Fox 25. We were an O&O. We were owned and operated by Fox Network. We now no longer are. We're owned by Cox Media Group. So Cox Media Group bought over the Fox station, and they moved him from California to Boston. And that man became my boss. And now all of a sudden I had an advocate in that office in a way that I hadn't before. I mean, it was truly, truly miraculous. And, if I had gone and taken that job in Indiana, I would be there and he would be back in Boston where I was supposed to be. And I think that that's why it's, it's so important that, there have been many times where I've said, Lord, baby Jesus, I need to know what I need to do here. And where I've felt like I've gotten an answer that was a 180 from what I would have chosen for myself. And then looking back, I can see exactly why it is. And you don't always get the why. And it's very frustrating because a lot of times you want to know the why and you don't get the why. But when you do, it can be awe-inspiring.
Yeah, Derek, I'm sorry. I just love the fact that the other part too is just that you don't burn relationships, like you left on really good relationships. And I try to tell staff that I work with or employees that, you never know that person could be a boss at the end of the day at another situation, and that could come full circle.
I firmly believe in advocating for yourself. Absolutely. Because, there are many times where managers of any industry may have an agenda that doesn't match your own. But what I also believe in is if you have a conflict with your boss and you feel like you're not being heard, it's important in that moment to decide, I am going to be the leader that I would have liked for this person to be. I am going to be my own sovereign nation within this greater land. And I'm going to advocate for my friends. I'm going to talk them down from a ledge. I'm going to be kind to them. I'm going to encourage them. I'm going to instruct them when I need to. I'm going to give them feedback. All of the things, if there's ever a circumstance in which you don't think you're getting something out of your leadership, then it's time that you do that for the people that perhaps are looking to you as a leader. And that is so important because that really does give you purpose within the midst of a very difficult situation.
Lily, I just want this on the record that these two knuckleheads fall with the 2-part question. So I asked, and then it started off, and then my brother decided to take over the whole podcast. So I just want this on the record. So when I get edited out, my questions are just you answering them and not me asking them.
It's been logged by a professional journalist for all eternity. This is like the hieroglyphics on the caves in Egypt. It is there for all eternity.
She's going to take it to the news tomorrow.
So yeah, because I know time's getting long, and I want to be able to get my last question before they take over, and this is the end of it for me. And they throw me off the Zoom call, but I found it interesting that you mentioned Edward R. Murrow because one of my favorite movies is Good Night and Good Luck. I love that movie, and I like the fact because what he tackled during Joe McCarthy and McCarthyism, and that's when journalism and TV reporting, all that was actually used. It was to root out lies and report with the truth, because once they found out the truth, people turned on him. And
Yep.
is there anything you learned from him as a journalist or anything? Because he seems to be the basically the creator of journalism and radio.
Yeah, the arbiter, the first, last, and final word of journalism. Absolutely. And I do think that what we want to do as journalists is we want to tell you what you want to know and what you need to know and the intersection thereof. And I think that particularly our team on the morning show does a really good job of that. And we do also have an investigative unit. It is so important to have journalists. It is so important to have people who know the system, who can work within the legal boundaries of the system, and who can ask those questions and hold people's feet to the fire. And I think that, local news does that better, I believe, than cable news, because cable news is fighting. I mean, they're fighting for, they're dividing a hair over and over and over again. They're fighting for every angle. And so your voice needs to be magnified in one direction. You're sort of, you understand who your viewers are. That's very important to know who your viewers are, who you're talking to. But then to lean into it in the ways that we've seen that cable news do. And this is on either side. I think local news does a much better job. And look, we all come with our own biases. We all come with our own lens, but that is also important to have your own lens. We need newsrooms that look like America. We need newsrooms that have people who are skinny and heavy, who are black, white, Asian, who are all colors of the rainbow, who are gay and straight, who all come from varying backgrounds, so that when there is that meeting of the minds, you get as close to the center as possible. Because when you don't do that, that's when you develop mistrust within your audience. When you sort of go on an agenda. But what I will say is there have been lots of times in our newsroom where, we have looked at numbers, or we've looked at statistics, or we've gone back to what a politician has said in some circumstance and held them accountable. And I know that the spirit of Murrow is in there somewhere, but I think that local news right now is doing it more effectively and more, and again, the reason that we're advocates is because we live here too. What you're going through, we're going through. What you're seeing, we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. So I think that that's why local news, continues to be so important.